Welcome to the fifth rendition of the Best Bets episode. For those of you that have been keeping up on the bets, we're up 12.3 units on the season. A little bit of a slow weekend, but as we've said in the other episodes, our best bets are going to be up on the website every day. But if you want to get in on the earliest lines that we put out, make sure you join the Discord and make sure you're keeping up on our Action Network account where we post our bets right away. So join the Discord. And if you want to ask any questions in there about betting or anything related to college hoops, we're always open to talking that stuff with you guys, and always going to be talking about some of that stuff that you ask on our episodes, as we've started to do with the Q&A sections. And then as we introduced for today's episode, we wanted you guys to submit some futures bets so that we could discuss them at the end of the episode. So, make sure to just get engaged. That's where, we're trying to build a community with this, and, hopefully that is an avenue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I definitely just want some good discussions in the Discord too. And yeah, just trying to get more people involved with, asking questions, especially with this part about the futures and stuff like that. So we can discuss things that are on your guys' minds, just so we're not necessarily talking about things that you guys may not want to hear at times. So definitely getting everyone involved, and hopefully we can start to create a pretty decent community.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, we got a few best bets for the beginning of the week here. Pretty slow start to the week, as we talked about in our last episode. But we do have the Jumpman Invitational down at the Spectrum Center tomorrow night. First game of that is North Carolina and Florida, a game I'll be at, as if those of you who weren't listening. So we'll get hopefully some good content from the game posted on the Instagram. But anyway, North Carolina, 4.5 point dogs here against the Gators, who moved up to 7th in the AP poll.
Yeah, definitely an exciting game to be at. First off, it should be a pretty good environment for you to be at.
Yeah,
it's just more of a buy low, sell high spot here for me. Florida just hasn't really been tested all that much so far this year. I mean, they've been really good, and it's a team that I've always been high on. It's a program I'm high on with Todd Golden at the helm. He's been fantastic in year 3 there. But I do think this is the top of the market for Florida, who hasn't been tested. They haven't played a team inside the top 50 of KenPom. And obviously Carolina's reeling. I do think they have some advantages on the offensive side. I think they can really not expose the point of attack defense of Florida, but they can actually give them some real issues, as they give a lot of teams issues with that trio of Trimble, Cadeau, and RJ Davis. And RJ Davis, he hasn't figured it out yet, and it's mostly just not hitting shots, but he's due for major regression. He's one of the best guards in the country. He's probably a top 5 guard. He's only shooting at 27% from 3 right now. He's due to figure it out at some point here. And this is a game that Carolina's going to really, really want. I mean, obviously Florida's going to want it too, but this is a high motivation spot for Carolina, who is going to be backed by a semi-home crowd, which doesn't really seem to be baked into the line at all. I'd personally have this closer to Florida -1.5. 4.5 seems a little bit outrageous for a team that really hasn't proven themselves on the national scale just yet. This is a team that's kind of built to beat up on inferior opponents with their shooting ability and their presence on the interior, able to get on the offensive glass against anyone, and they can absolutely dominate smaller mid-major teams and just get all over the glass. And while Carolina, that's probably their weak point, is on the interior, they're not on the defensive glass. They're inside the top 100 in defensive rebound rate, and they should be able to hold their own a little bit here at least and slow down Florida's offensive rebound attack, which is where they create their most value. And like I said, they have paths to score here, and I do think they're going to be the more motivated side. They've let some opportunities slip away, so I expect them to maybe not win the game. I think it's going to be a super tight game throughout, but it's more me just playing the number here, playing the +4.5. It came out at around 3. I thought 3 was closer to a proper number. I probably wouldn't bet it at 3. At 4.5, it's a play that I have to make regardless of what I think of these two teams.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I think that North Carolina, as we discussed on our previous episode, they're due for a big win. And I think Florida's due for, I think seventh in the country is just a little bit high for them. I think they're being a tad overvalued right now. They're a good team, but defensively they have their flaws. Now they've been really good on the offensive glass. North Carolina, the interior is a struggle for them, but like you said, they've been solid on the defensive glass. Like guys like Trimble, they have guards that aren't afraid to rebound the ball, which definitely helps. Um, I think that they'll be able to limit that enough, and I actually expect North Carolina's guards to make more shots and be able to get down the lane to the rim, and just disrupt the weaker backcourt defense of the Gators. So I kind of expect North Carolina to win this game. I know the spread's at 4.5, and it's the spread. Vegas obviously thinks that Florida should be favored to win this game, but I mean I do too. But I think North Carolina gets right here a little bit and comes out with a victory. So I definitely expect them to cover this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a major step up in class for Florida. And I do think, I mean, they have a lot of paths to offense here too. Like, especially like on the offensive glass. I also think Walter Clayton has like a decent setup here, although Trimble's probably going to be guarding him for a lot of this game. Carolina's pick and roll defense has been pretty bad overall. Like, they haven't really figured out how to cover pick and roll. They're more conservative there. They play more drop coverage, and Clayton loves to shoot off of that pick and roll, off the dribble. Can hit some pull up threes here, but yeah, it's mostly just a number play here. Maybe looking at like a Walter Clayton over his point total. I saw it at 18.5, and for a fast paced game, and it's a team that, you know, they're favored like in that like foul range margin, like to where he can hit some late game free throws to push it over the edge. So that is a play I would go with, is Walter Clayton over 18.5 points if I had to bet a player prop in this game.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. The next game on your radar for tomorrow, the Pirates of Seton Hall back at it again, plus 9.5 against my favorite team in the country, Villanova. This is really just, if I had to guess, this is you just playing that number for Seton Hall as a dog.
100%. I'm playing the trend again, but it's even stronger in conference too. Like, this is mostly just a perfect storm, like in an ATS spot. As we talked about, Holloway's elite as a sizable underdog. And Neptune's not really great as like a sizable favorite. They both play at a pretty slow pace. Holloway's 25-13 as a dog of 5.5 or more in his career. And Neptune, although it's not like a bad number, he's 17-18 ATS as a favorite of 5.5 or more. So it's not like his teams are able to break away from inferior competition. And like I said, it's going to be a super slow paced game. Both teams are bottom 20 in pace in the entire country. Nova's 346, Seton Hall's 359. So that obviously is going to favor the dog. There's going to be way less possessions. I wouldn't be surprised if this game's played at, I don't know, 58, 57 possessions apiece, which is super, super low. And another trend, bottom 50 pace teams as a conference dog of 7 or more are 55% against the spread since 2019, 2020. And that's a huge sample size. That's like almost, I believe it's almost like a 700 game sample size from what I've tracked. So definitely another pretty significant trend there. And we talked, maybe talk about the motivation a little bit. Like, Seton Hall is coming off a heartbreaking loss in a rivalry game, but I don't really think that's going to matter all that much here, because it's the first conference game of the year. Like, both teams should have equal motivation here. And for Villanova, they're shooting over their heads a little bit. Like, obviously Dixon is fantastic, but he's shooting like 53% from three this year. And Seton Hall has the defenders. They have the versatility to defend on the perimeter, as well as like contain him a bit one-on-one in the post. And Jameer Brickus is shooting 50% from three as well. Like, you're automatically due for regression when you're shooting that well from three. And the defense of Villanova has some holes, and Seton Hall, while they're a pretty pitiful offense, like, they can get on the glass here a little bit, and their athleticism can go over the top of this Villanova defense that isn't so athletic up front. So all these factors lead to me taking Seton Hall. It's mostly just me playing the spot against the spread. with all of the trends that back it. So I'll just continue to go Bakshi and Holloway.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Eric Dixon's shooting splits up until their last game against Farley Dickinson, he was actually shooting a higher percentage from three than he was from the field. And now after their last game, he had a 25% 3-point percentage in that game. He's now at 58.6% from the field and 55.6% from three, which is still, I think, just him shooting way over his head. So I expect some regression. Seton Hall is just a physical team that, you know, plays a slow pace. They're gonna defend because that's what they have to do if they're gonna compete in the Big East. They're at the bottom of that conference, as we know, but they're good enough defensively. They play a slow enough pace where they can limit teams on the offensive end just by sheer number of possessions in the basketball game. So if they can get enough on the offensive end, they should certainly be able to cover this number. Villanova, not a team I'm high on, as everyone knows. So I'm a little weary because Villanova has been playing better. But, you know, I think the side you have to be on is the Seton Hall side. You know, they seem to be playing solid basketball after that loss to Rutgers. Like, they showed that they can compete with solid competition. Like, Rutgers isn't elite by any stretch, but they can hang around even as big dogs. So I definitely would agree you have to be on that side if you're going to bet this game.
Yeah, I mean, they probably should have beat Rutgers too. Like, they led that game for a large portion. And I do think they can turn over Villanova a decent amount. Villanova's pretty soft with the ball, and that's where Seton Hall can create some offense, get out in transition, maybe speed up this pace a little bit more, which I think would favor their offense a bit more. Although we don't want to see a million possessions in this game just because Seton Hall's offense will eventually fizzle out, and it could end up being a double-digit win for Nova. But I do expect it to be a slow-paced game, and they're going to stay inside the number.
Yeah. And your last game, I know you wanted to briefly mention for tomorrow, Utah minus 31.5 against Florida A&M. Now, little tidbit of information for people out there before you get into your analysis, Cody. But Florida A&M is sixth in the country at 6-1 against the spread this year. So something has to give here.
Mm-hmm. But I'm willing to go against that. They've covered a bunch as a dog, as a sizable dog too. But I think Utah's built to smash inferior opponents with their elite size and shooting ability. Like, they're second in the country in 2-point defense as well. So it's going to be really tough for Florida A&M to generate baskets because they don't really shoot the ball well either. Personally, I don't think they really do anything well. They're like near the bottom of the country. They're like in the 350s of KenPom right now. And yeah, Utah's going to dominate the glass in this game, as they do on both sides of the ball. Like, they dominate high major teams as well with their size. They have 4 or 5 guys that are 6'10 plus that should be able to really dominate the glass here. And they're 30th in the country in tempo as well, which will give them more opportunities in this game to stretch the lead. And Florida A&M's like, they're willing to run a little bit too here. They're 100th in pace, so they're definitely going to be willing to, you know, play a ton of possessions in this game. That only helps a sizable favorite. And Utah shoots the ball incredibly well. They shoot, I think they're like top 40 in 3-point rate, and they're top 50 in the country in 3-point percentage. So one massive run could really, you know, put Florida A&M away. But the only downside to this would be, like, if Utah pulls their starters and gets a bit dicey there, as like if they're up like 35 with like 4 minutes to go, they pull their starters, which they have done a few times. But they are 5-2 against the spread as a double-digit non-conference favorite this season. And it's such a tough place to play because of the elevation. And it's not a team like Florida A&M's not going to be used to playing in elevation. So they could get gassed near like the second half of this game, and it could just create a big run for Utah.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I mean, Florida A&M is not an elite team by any stretch. I think they've just been fortunate to cover some spreads here early in the season.
I think they've backdoored a bunch of games. Like, I think they've covered each game by like 2 or 3 points. So that's nothing really to look into. Utah's just, their cover margin's pretty elite. Like, they've beaten some teams it's by 50 plus.
Yeah. Now, there's one more game I wanted to bring up for tomorrow, just for some against the spread, for an against the spread note here. There's one remaining team in the country that has covered every game, and they play tomorrow night. That's Oregon State playing against Sacramento State Hornets. Oregon State 8-0 against the spread this year. They come into this game as 20-point favorites, which seems a bit interesting to me because Sacramento State is 2-8. They have losses at home to Mercyhurst and Nebraska Omaha and some pretty poor teams. So 20 here is just an interesting number. So there won't be any action here, but this is definitely an interesting one, I think, to monitor. For those of you keeping tally on Oregon State's streak of covering spreads. Personally, I have this gut feeling Sacramento State is going to mess around and cover tomorrow. I think that the Beavers go to 8-1 against the spread tomorrow. 20 just seems like a big number for them to cover.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I think Oregon State's going to be sleeping at the wheel here. Like, they just beat an undefeated team in UC Irvine, who I love. I think they're like one of the best mid-majors in the country. They beat them by double digits at home. There's no way they're not sleeping at the wheel, at least for the first half. You know, they have Charleston on deck, who's like a well-respected mid-major as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sacramento State was able to hang around for a little bit.
Yeah, I think an interesting play for this game could be Sacramento State in the first half to cover, whatever that might be. So maybe worthy of a look, but you know, definitely just one that's interesting to monitor because of the against the spread implications.
Yeah, I think we could get like an 11.5 there in the first half. So maybe it's a bit scary for a team that's not very good. They could just piss it away in the first half, and
they could.
Those are ones that you start kicking yourself over when you try to get a little bit too cute and it doesn't go your way. So I've been there before.
You get cued on the Sacramento State Hornets, who lost to Mercyhurst. Who, if you look up Mercyhurst basketball on Google and you look at their games, they don't even have a logo next to their team, and Sacramento State lost to them. So, I think better days are ahead, hopefully, for the Hornets.
Yeah, I would hope so.
So there's another game on Wednesday, part of the Jumpman Invitational. The second game of that, we have Michigan and Oklahoma. Projected line, obviously lines aren't out yet for that one, but projected line is Michigan -3.5 against the undefeated Oklahoma Sooners, sitting at 10-0, but they did fall a spot in the AP poll this week for anyone that keeps tabs on that. So Michigan coming in 3.5-point favorites, as I said. A big spot for them to bounce back, I think.
Yeah, I think Michigan, I'd say realistically probably should have ended up beating Arkansas, but obviously they blew a big lead early in the game. And I think they're going to be super motivated to get this game against an undefeated team in Oklahoma, who I'm not super high on. They're due for regression in a lot of areas. And it starts with the 3-point line, defending the 3-point line. They're 258th in 3-point attempt rate allowed, but they're allowing just 29% of those shots to go in. And they allow some open ones as well. I don't really think they've played any necessarily elite shooting teams. So that's definitely something to look out for. Michigan could shoot the ball. They have a ton of scoring depth, a ton of shooting depth coming off the bench. Guys like Sam Walters and Will Cheddar are going to be able to light them up as well when the guards aren't hitting shots. So Oklahoma's also kind of getting shredded on the interior. It hasn't been great, honestly. They're 204th in 2-point field goal percentage defense allowed. Teams like Texas A&M Commerce, Stetson, Northwestern State have all shot over 50% inside the arc. All three of those teams are in the 340s or lower, in KenPom. It's ugly. And to give up 50% inside the arc, it kind of shows that this defense is a bit fraudulent. I do think the offense of Oklahoma on the perimeter may have the edge with like Fears, Elvis, and Duke Miles, like 3 guards that I really like. I think they're super talented. And I think that overall they have the edge over Michigan's guards, who I'm not in love with because they don't really take care of the ball that well. But that is the only thing Michigan needs to do to be able to, score on this Oklahoma defense efficiently. And they've been a little bit better taking care of the ball as of late. A lot of it was Danny Wolf not being able to take care of the ball, but his turnover rate has gone way down, and he's starting to figure things out. And Michigan's just a tough cover. If they're not turning the ball over, they can score on literally any defense in the country. Like, you have to defend so many different areas. Wolf and Golden are so good on the interior, and then the shooting that they have is pretty unmatched. So yeah, and they have a solid interior defense as well to, match what Oklahoma likes to do on the interior. So yeah, give me the Wolverines here. I think they can win big in this game. Oklahoma's like all this regression or all this defensive 3-point shooting regression could all come down in this game, and it could really hurt them.
Yeah, no, I like the Wolverines too, I think. Side note, I did hear through the grapevine from someone who saw Jeremiah Fears play live on Saturday at the Paycom Center that he is like, he's legit live. Like, he's really good, but he's like, live, he sounds like he's even more impressive. So definitely someone I think to keep our eye on as the season moves forward. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be a tough night for him in this one. I think Michigan just comes in and handles business, and I think they win pretty comfortably. I think that the duo of Golden and Wolf disrupts the Sooners' attack. I think that they're able to kind of get whatever they want, and ultimately, I think they end up winning by much more than that 3.5. I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of a rout here. I'm not very high on the Sooners. Our preseason rankings showed we weren't very high on the Sooners, so I expect the Sooners to fall back to earth here pretty soon and end up outside the top 25.
Yeah, and honestly, like, Jeremiah Fears he's getting lottery draft buzz right now. Like, he's been that good. Been a little bit loose with the ball, but the talent is certainly there. And yeah, he's definitely a scary guy to go up against. But yeah, I'm just mostly just fading I'm not going to call them fraudulent, but I do think they're definitely due for a ton of regression.
Yeah, for sure. Not much else going on early this week. We'll have definitely more in our next Best Bets episode, at least games wise. So now we're going to move forward to some of the futures best bets that you guys had thrown in the comments or maybe texted to us to get our thoughts on. And the first one we've kind of touched on a little bit already in past episodes, but Duke right now to win the national championship at plus 900 was the first one.
Yeah, this is one we've already recommended. So like, I'm definitely all in on it. I'm on board. If I had to pick a national champion, it would be the Duke Blue Devils right now. I think they have the best defense in the country, and their offense is only going to get better as it goes on. And by the time March comes around, I think they're going to have their late game offense figured out to an extent. And like a guy like Isaiah Evans stepping up in big games and making shots only helps them. Like, it only adds to the depth that they have on this roster. I just think there's so much versatility that they can match so many different styles. So yeah, I would agree with Duke plus 900. I have some money on it myself, and hopefully we can both cash on this.
Yeah, no, I definitely can't disagree with the value there, but watch out for the Dayton Flyers. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I think that's great value. Next one, another one that we've probably already discussed, or at least kind of adjacently discussed, Iowa State to win the Big 12 at plus 250.
Yeah, you don't have to talk me into betting on Iowa State. I have them in pretty much every market you could have them in. I like them more on the national championship because at plus 250 to win the Big 12, which is, I mean, it's the second best conference in America now. Like, the SEC definitely has that taken at this point. It's a 3-horse race at the top against Houston and Kansas. Like, I just, at plus 250, it just doesn't seem like great value. I don't think any of the top 3 teams have any sort of value right now. Like Kansas, like would surprise me if they went undefeated at home. So that's gonna make them right in the hunt to win the conference. And yeah, I just don't love the number. Like this number in the preseason was closer to 700, and I thankfully was able to snag some of that 700 in the preseason. So I definitely wouldn't recommend a plus 250. Although maybe you could get it in the middle of conference season, and it's maybe you can get it around like a 400 after a loss, and they have a fortunate like stretch run in their schedule coming up. But at 250, I probably wouldn't take this right now.
Yeah, the value, the risk reward doesn't really seem there to me right now. Plus 250 is probably on that borderline. I think if it got lower than that, like if it got down to plus 200, like that's just too much of a risk for sure. And you're much better, as Cody said, you're much better off just throwing some money at their national championship odds or like a Final Four berth or something like that. But plus 250, it's like borderline being worth it to take it. If it got any lower than that, I think it's definitely like a no-go because your return's just not great enough for the risk of like the gauntlet that they're going to have to run into in the Big 12. And I fully expect some of those other Big 12 teams to get better, right? Like I think Baylor's going to figure some things out. I think that there are other quality opponents in there, Cincinnati, Texas Tech. If you catch those teams on the right night, then you could be in some trouble. So, I think that 250 is pushing it to take that.
Yeah, for sure. And when there's 2 other top 10 teams in your conference, like it's really tough to take a plus 250. You're better off like taking a flyer on a team down the board that you really like. Like I personally like Texas Tech a lot. I just don't really see them like overthrowing any of those top 3. Like one of these top 3 teams is like very likely to win it, but I just think they're all overpriced at this time.
Yeah. The next one, UConn to win the Big East at plus 220, which is another one that while the Big East is pretty weak, 220 is just it's short odds for a UConn team that they're great. Don't get me wrong, but like St. John's could give them trouble, Marquette could give them trouble. So, I'm a bit weary on this one, even though I do think they are going to win it. It's still a little bit scary.
Yeah, I like this more than Iowa State to win the Big 12 personally, just because the bottom of the Big East is so weak, and it's a true 3-horse race with St. John's kind of being like the odd man out there. Like it's pretty much a race between UConn and Marquette for this, and I'm a tad lower on Marquette. So if I had to pick a team to win it, it would be UConn. But I just worry about it a little bit. It all depends on how you feel. Like, is UConn still that elite top 5 team? If you think they're that sort of team, then I think 220 is good value. I personally have them closer to like 10th in the entire country, and I think they're vulnerable on a lot of nights in the Big East. So at 220, I don't really love it. There's not a ton of value down the board either, but I mean, you're going to hate this one, but Villanova at plus 5,000, if you want to just sprinkle a few dollars on it, is almost worth it for a Xavier team now. Like Villanova could easily be like the 4th best team in this conference when it's all said and done, just because everyone else in this league at the bottom is so bad. Like I'm telling you, Creighton has a ton of flaws. Xavier is beat up now. Fremantle is out. He might miss the rest of the year.
Unfortunately, it's sad.
Yeah. So like if Villanova's offense continues to be like top 20, which they sit at like 17, 18 in the entire country in offensive efficiency, like there's an actual path for them to win this. If everything needs to break their way, obviously, but you're getting 50 to 1.
Let me ask you this. When you say a few dollars, how much are we talking?
It depends on your budget, $5. I don't know. $5 to win. You'd win 250. Like that's pretty good.
Listen, if you put $5 on that, I would rather recommend they take $5, go to the roulette table, And you could make more. You
Yeah,
could
you're not
make
getting
more
50
than
to
250.
1.
No, but if you sit there and you red, black, you just keep getting it right. You got better odds than you do of Villanova winning the Big East.
But we'll see. Maybe we'll clip this and see what happens if Villanova's in the running.
Better odds of that. You have better odds
Yeah.
of putting $5 down on a blackjack hand at a $15 minimum table than
Yeah.
Villanova.
Yeah, you probably do.
Anyway, enough about Villanova. Oh, I can't stand them. But Florida to win the SEC plus 1,500. The value's there probably, but I think it's just such a gauntlet in the SEC, as we've talked about. Like, they're the best conference in the country right now. It's hard to even say who's going to win this conference, but I think that Florida has too many flaws, especially on the defensive end, to say they could win this. I just think that they're going to run into teams like Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky. I think is right up there. Alabama, of course. I just think Florida is a little bit hard to trust in regards to winning this conference.
Yeah, I mean, this conference, it feels like a little bit of a crapshoot just because there's so many good teams in the league. Like, I could see Florida happening to win the league, like maybe a couple go down with a couple injuries and it really gives them a path. But yeah, and if I'm going to take a team, like, it's probably going to be a team down the board a bit just because you're getting such a good number, because every team in this league is so good that you can't really set like a super heavy favorite. Like, the favorite right now is Auburn at plus 180, and they've looked far and away the best team in the country. So I think it's fair value at 1,500. I don't think you're getting like a super great number at this point in time. Plus, they haven't really been tested yet. But if they go out tomorrow and smash Carolina, I think you're going to see this number trickle down a bit, and it's because you're going to see the market sort of respect Florida in a way, just because in their first true test they go out and beat a Carolina team that is still solid and they beat them handily. I do think this number drops a bunch. So if you're going to take it, I think you take it right now. So I think this would be the perfect time.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see this number at some point in the SEC season when Florida loses 2 in a row or something. I wouldn't be surprised to see this number creep back to like 2,000 or something. So now, if you are going to take it, like, you can take it now, but you could also hold out and maybe hope for them to slide a little bit, whether that's like injury driven because the backcourt depth isn't crazy. If one of those guards went down, but not for long term. So who knows? But the last bet that you guys mentioned was Illinois plus 1,600 to make the Final Four.
Yeah, I don't mind this, honestly. I think it's playing the upside of what Illinois can be. They have a ton of balance. The defense proved that they're solid in that game against Tennessee, only giving up 66 points. Obviously, it's super tough to score on Tennessee, so they weren't able to get it done there. But if like the teams you want to back in March are the teams that have a ton of balance, like teams that can be in the range of top 30 on offense and top 30 on defense. Illinois fits that mold right now. Like, I think they sit around top 15 defensively, which is super impressive. And there's no like true weaknesses on that side of the ball. They shoot a ton of threes, giving them upside to go on a hot streak in the tournament. So this is probably one of the better values on a team to make the Final Four. And yeah, it's definitely something I would recommend. I recommended them to win the Big Ten just because I just don't caught up with this team. I think analytically they're the best team in the conference. It's just a matter of them being super young and maybe being a little bit too volatile to be consistent. And to rattle off they'd have to rattle off 4 wins in a row in March. Who knows what they're going to look like then? But I think this is more just playing the upside. And I actually do think it's a pretty decent number.
Yeah, it's a solid number. I mean, I still think they have some things to figure out for sure, and some growing to do. But they should be able to do that over the course of a long Big Ten season against some physical opponents, especially on the road. I think Big Ten play on the road, aside from Oregon, UCLA, Washington, always prepares teams for, the grueling games that come in March. So Illinois, I think it's solid value. I don't know as if I'd go as far as to say I expect them to get to that level, but I don't mind the value, all things considered.
For sure. I'm not really a fan of betting like Final Four odds personally. Like if I'm going to bet the Final Four, I might as well just bet them to win the national title and have hedge opportunities later on. Like if they make the Final Four, hedge, take the other side. And Illinois is not a team that's going to be a massive dog against anyone. So I think you're going to be able to, have a decent hedge odds there. So if you're going to play this, I think you just bet them to win the title.
Yeah, for sure. So that's it for the bets that you guys had submitted. But other than that, we're going to be posting our best bets articles the next couple of days, especially for the Jumpman Invitational, and then we'll have another best bets episode later in the week to go over the games for the weekend and later in the week. So make sure you join the Discord, as we said. Keep up with the Action account and just get active in the Discord and in the comments on Instagram. And always, you can shoot us some questions if you have any thoughts about any games that you might be trying to bet, but maybe we didn't talk about. So, other than that, hope you guys enjoy the Jumpman Invitational, and we'll talk to you in the next one.